6 weeks ago, Sarah Johnson vanished after nearly calling her own daughter during a pageant. Today, she sobbed into her attorney's shoulder, trembling in court. I once trusted her completely, now I watch as the lies spread like wildfire. A pink dress still sealed in evidence. Lies on the table, Olivia's hospital monitor still beeps. My absence cost us time but not this bowel. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. When we were kids, Sarah used to win every pageant. Mom glued rhinestones to cheap gowns and taught her to smile through hunger. Back then, I thought it was discipline. Now I know it was control. Sarah gave birth at 18 and vowed Olivia would have everything but freedom. I remember Olivia posing in heels too big, a plastic crown slipping. We clapped, she cried in the bathroom afterward. I was abroad, I missed it all. Olivia once whispered to me, if I lose, Mommy doesn't talk to me. She was 6. That day, she wore a purple sequined gown and tripped on stage. Sarah smiled like nothing happened, but later smashed a tiara in the parking lot. I held Olivia in the back seat while she cried into a teddy bear. I'd flown in for one weekend. It wasn't enough. I left thinking Sarah was just stressed. I was dead wrong. Sarah called me the night before Olivia collapsed. She said Olivia was finally thin enough to win. I heard crying in the background. Maybe Olivia. When I landed, Brian picked me up, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. Olivia was in ECU, dangerously dehydrated. Sarah disappeared that morning. The doctors asked about her food intake. I had no answers. The nurse handed me a calorie log. Sarah kept just numbers, no love. I felt nauseated. Marcus, Sarah's boyfriend, claimed she was just overwhelmed. He said she left to clear her head. But he couldn't explain why her phone was off, or why she posted a photo of Olivia's last trophy while her daughter lay unconscious. Brian nearly punched him. Evelyn from KSBS arrived that afternoon. She asked why Sarah's lawyer contacted them first. I didn't even know Sarah had legal counsel. Everything about her felt rehearsed. But this wasn't theater. I checked Sarah's browser history, hundreds of searches about child acting contracts. Pageant diet pills, even how to bypass KSBS investigations. It was chilling. Tamara, Olivia's school counselor, said Olivia often slept during class, but Sarah told her it was jet lag from traveling for competitions. Tamara didn't press, none of us did. I brought it to Evelyn, who just nodded and scribbled. Olivia stirred in her hospital bed that night. I promised her things would change. Judith, the night nurse, told me Olivia woke up screaming one night, shouting, no more treadmill. Her heart rate spiked. Sarah had made her run every morning before school. Even while sick, I mailed KSBS again. Catherine, Sarah's lawyer, suddenly accused me of planting stories and trying to gain custody. My family group chat went silent. One cousin blocked me. Sarah's narrative was spreading. Natalie, the jealous sister, the attention seeker. I was becoming the villain in her play. At the courthouse, I confronted Sarah in the hallway. Her eyes were hollow, lips painted like stage makeup. I showed her Olivia's lab results. You nearly killed her, I said. She blinked, then smiled and said, she was almost perfect. Security separated us as she began sobbing. The cameras caught everything, my anger, her tears. It aired that night. Strangers online called me a monster. Brian unplugged his phone after threats poured in. Sarah's script was working. The judge allowed supervised visits. Sarah arrived in a pastel suit, clutching a new teddy bear. Olivia turned away, flinching when Sarah tried to hug her. Evelyn documented everything, but the public saw only what Sarah shared: filtered selfies, teary captions, prayer emojis. Catherine framed me as emotionally unstable. My medical records were somehow leaked. Headlines questioned my fitness as an aunt. I broke down in my car, gripping Olivia's old ballet shoe. This was psychological war. Brian tried to go public with documents, texts, training logs, a video of Sarah shouting. But the video glitched mid-upload. We suspect her boyfriend tampered with the account. My inbox flooded with hate. Tamara was placed on leave for bias. Evelyn grew cautious, reluctant to take a side. Sarah's influence was real and relentless. I screamed into a pillow that night. The system wasn't just broken, it was bending for her, and Olivia was still in danger. A psychologist hired by Sarah declared Olivia high-functioning and accused me of projecting trauma. His credentials were shaky, but Catherine made him the centerpiece of their defense. KSBS delayed hearings. Brian and I hired our own expert, who was immediately discredited online. I stared at Olivia's drawing stick figures with missing mouths. She hadn't spoken in 2 weeks. My gut screamed to act, but the law moved like molasses. Sarah smiled in every courtroom appearance. Marcus secretly messaged me. He claimed Sarah threatened him, said she'd report him for tax fraud unless he testified for her. He sent me a screenshot of her text, "You owe me. Don't forget who saved you from jail." It hit me then Sarah wasn't just obsessed. She was orchestrating everything. I forwarded the message to Evelyn. Her reply, "Let's meet in person." For the first time, KSBS was listening. The tide faintly was shifting. Evelyn met me at a coffee shop. Plainclothes, no badge. She slid over a folder marked confidential. Inside were records from 2 states. Sarah had changed names in pageant registries, entered Olivia in contests, despite medical warnings. Some documents were forged. Evelyn whispered, "We suspect interstate fraud." My breath caught. This wasn't just abuse, it was criminal. Charges could stick. A Sarah's Perfect Mother Act cracked. We had proof finally, but we had to move fast, before she vanished again. Brian tracked a burner phone Sarah used. It pinged near a beauty supply store. We drove there, found her car, and waited. Hours later, she appeared, wig slightly crooked, buying child-sized lashes. When we approached, she ran, heels clacking, phone dropping. We caught her on video. I uploaded it within hours. It spread. Public sympathy cracked. The mask slipped. KSBS fast-tracked the custody review. Sarah couldn't explain the disguise or the burner. The internet was finally on our side. Olivia drew again, a girl standing on a stage, a crown, holding hands with 2 tall figures labeled BNN. When I showed it to Evelyn, she smiled. As placement. She said, we'd filed for temporary custody. Catherine countered with claims of manipulation, but the judge watched the disguise footage. He called it deeply disturbing. For the first time, Sarah was silent. KSBS suspended all visits. Olivia came home with us quietly. No headlines, just peace. Sarah's lawyer dropped her case. Marcus admitted a sworn affidavit detailing manipulation and fraud. Olivia testified via recorded video. Her voice was soft, but steady. She said, "I don't like shows anymore. I like books." The court granted full custody to Brian. I became Olivia's legal guardian. Sarah was ordered into psychiatric care. Her pageant trophies were boxed and returned, and no one clapped. No spotlight, just the rustling of paper and Olivia reaching for my hand. The media tried to sensationalize Sarah's fall from tiara queen to trauma center, but we refused interviews. Brian changed Olivia's last name to Keller. Her room became lavender and quiet. No trophies, just books and art. I found a sticky note Olivia had written, "Mommy used to yell, now you hug." It gutted me. Sarah's obsession nearly erased her. But Olivia survived, and in her silence, we found something louder than applause healing. Damara returned to school. She hugged Olivia and whispered, "You're safe now." Evelyn sent one final report, thorough, damning, and signed. It concluded parental overreach resulted in psychological harm. Olivia's art shifted, bright suns, open windows. Sarah was granted conditional therapy-only visits, to be reviewed annually. There were no balloons, no confetti, just a steady rebuild. We had family dinners again. Olivia helped make salad. She laughed when Brian dropped a tomato. It was the sound of new beginnings. One day, Olivia asked if she could just be normal. We let her skip therapy that week and go to the library instead. She picked books about space, dinosaurs, and baking. No makeup tutorials, no pageant memoirs. Evelyn checked in, smiling at the titles. "She's choosing her world now," she said. Sarah's shadow still loomed, but Olivia stood in the light. I finally breathed without fear. We weren't just surviving, we were living, and that was everything. Sarah sent one letter from the facility, 3 pages. Full of blame, beauty tips, and plans to return stronger. We didn't reply. The therapist said it was best. Olivia folded the letter into a paper airplane and tossed it off the porch. It fluttered, crashed into a bush. "It doesn't fly," she said. We smiled. Sarah might resurface, but her control wouldn't. Olivia's voice grew each day, so did mine. And in that, we found our power. Sarah's old fans tried to rally support. A Justice for Sarah hashtag trended briefly, boosted by a podcast host who'd never read court files, but public sentiment shifted. Former pageant moms began sharing stories. One recalled Sarah forcing Olivia to rehearse in heels until midnight. The wave turned. Olivia watched me scroll, then asked, "Am I safe?" I nodded forever. She squeezed my hand. Sarah's platform crumbled. Olivia's safety became the only narrative that mattered. The truth finally won. A package arrived, Sarah's old pageant scrapbook, mailed anonymously. Inside were clippings, score sheets, and a note in Sarah's handwriting, "My legacy lives." I burned it in the fireplace. Olivia watched the flames, then asked, "Can we draw now?" We sat on the floor with crayons. She drew animals. I drew stars. Brian brought cookies. That night, there were no nightmares, only soft breathing and a moonlit room. Sarah's past tried to haunt us. We chose not to answer. Olivia started therapy journaling. Her first entry read, "I'm not a doll." It stunned her counselor. Sarah used to say, "Pageants make girls perfect." Now, Olivia was defining her own perfection. At school, she made her first friend a girl who liked frogs and had missing front teeth. No tiaras, no heels, just giggles at recess. I emailed Evelyn. She smiled today. Evelyn replied with a heart emoji. It felt like a trophy, a quiet, powerful win. Olivia entered a school science fair. Her project, "Why Stars Burn," she lit up explaining solar flares. No stage makeup, no posing, just wonder. Brian and I cheered like she won gold. She didn't place, but she didn't care. A classmate hugged her after. "That was cool," he said. It was her first real applause, uncocked. Later, she drew stars over her bed. I stared at them for hours. She wasn't performing, she was becoming, and we were witnessing it. Damara introduced Olivia to a support group for girls recovering from performance pressure. At first, she stayed silent, but one afternoon she raised her hand and said, "I hated smiling when it hurt." A hush followed, then another girl nodded. That night, Olivia slept without nightmares. I watched her breathe, steady and unguarded. Sarah used to say pain built character. She was wrong. Safety does. Olivia wasn't a star in a costume, now she was free. Sarah filed an appeal, denied in under 24 hours. Her therapist recommended extended care. The judge signed off. Catherine vanished from a case. Marcus changed numbers. It was like the world, piece by piece, stopped orbiting her. Olivia asked, "Is it over?" I told her it's quieter. That night, she played music, no lyrics, just melody. She danced in socks across the living room. Brian clapped offbeat. We laughed until we cried. It wasn't dramatic, it was joy. A year later, Olivia spoke at her school assembly. Topic: what I love about ordinary days. She said, "I like grilled cheese, books, and not being famous." Some parents clapped, some cried. Her teacher emailed me the video. I watched it 10 times. Sarah's legacy had ended not in fire, but in freedom. Olivia wasn't a survivor, she was a storyteller, and the story she was writing had no sequence. No scripts, just truth and her voice. I used to think fighting meant proving Sarah wrong. Now I know it means protecting what matters. Olivia's bedtime routine is sacred: 1 story, 2 hugs, 3 questions. Sometimes she asks why I stayed. I say, "Because you're worth it." She smiles. That smile isn't for judges, it's real. I don't need applause, I need peace, and that's what we've built, night by night, word by word. A life she chooses, a love that doesn't demand. Sometimes I still dream of courtrooms and hospital monitors, but those fade. What stays are mornings, Olivia in mismatched socks, brushing her teeth to pop songs, Brian humming while making pancakes. I used to chase justice, now I nurture calm. Olivia's drawings fill our fridge, and show tiaras. One has a lion with glasses. "That's me," she said, strong and smart. She's growing up not to impress but to exist. That's our victory. Quiet, steady, undefeated. I found Sarah's old scrapbook in the attic. Pageants, ribbons, chore charts. I almost threw it out. Instead, I boxed it up for the record. For Olivia, one day, healing isn't pretending it never happened. It's choosing what to carry forward. We kept Olivia's first science trophy. It sits by her window. She dusted herself. No speeches, just pride. The kind that doesn't need flashing lights, only a sunrise. Only a life of her own. Sarah remained in long-term psychiatric care. Her name faded from headlines. Catherine moved firms. Marcus never resurfaced. Olivia was safe. Brian filed for adoption, and I stood beside them at the hearing. The judge smiled. It wasn't closure, it was commitment. We didn't win a battle, we earned peace. And in that quiet courtroom, Olivia squeezed my hand. "We're okay now, right?" she whispered. I nodded. "We always will be." Olivia painted her new room lavender with stars on the ceiling. She chose every detail, no theme, no rules, just what made her happy. Brian built a bookshelf. I read to her from it every night. Her favorite, a book on astronauts. "They fly without crowns," she said once. We all laughed. The world she's building isn't about escape, it's about arrival. She's home, and she knows it. So do we. At her school's open house, Olivia presented a project on mental health. She included a slide, "Safe feels like bedtime stories." Parents clapped, some cried. I stood in back, heartful. She didn't name Sarah, she didn't have to. Her resilience spoke louder than any headline. No tiaras, no trauma, just a child brave, brilliant and free, and me, learning every day how to be the adult she needed all along. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.